easy, boy. You are safe now.
The automatic doors of Coastal Companion Animal Clinic hissed open, and every head in the waiting room turned at once. Not because of the uniform, though the desert pattern camouflage and the gold trident pinned above his chest pocket drew stares of their own. It was the dog. 100 pounds of muscle and instinct strained against a leather leash, ears pinned flat, dark eyes locked on nothing and everything at the same time. His name was Ghost, and even the veterinarians who had spent 15 years around aggressive, frightened, and pain-racked animals took an instinctive step back. "He bites," the man said flatly, before anyone could even greet him. His voice carried the clipped authority of someone used to being obeyed instantly, the kind of voice forged in places most people would never have to imagine. "Nobody touches him. Not the front desk. Not the techs. Not the vet, until I say it's safe. Are we clear?" The receptionist nodded quickly, sliding a clipboard forward without getting any closer than she had to. The lead veterinarian, Dr. Osei, appeared from the back hallway already texting warnings to his team: "Military working dog, handler on edge, proceed with caution." This wasn't the first retired service animal they had treated, but something about this one felt different. Ghost wasn't just guarded. He was grieving something, and grief made animals unpredictable in ways that fear alone did not. The Marine's name was Sergeant Caleb Reyes, and 3 weeks ago he had buried his best friend. Not a person. A brother-in-arms named Dominguez, killed in an ambush that Ghost had also survived, dragging his unconscious handler nearly 200 yards through gunfire before backup arrived. Ghost had been reassigned to Caleb only 10 days ago, a transfer that neither of them had asked for and neither of them had accepted. The dog didn't trust him. Caleb, if he was honest with himself, didn't trust himself either. He'd been ordered to bring Ghost in for a mandatory post-deployment wellness check, a formality the base required before any working dog could be cleared for retraining. Caleb intended to get in and out as fast as possible. Ghost had other plans. When a young tech named Priya approached with nothing more than a chart in her hands, the German shepherd erupted, a snarl tearing from his throat so violent it silenced the entire waiting room. Caleb hauled back on the leash with both arms, boots skidding against the tile, veins standing out on his forearms from the effort. "I told you," he barked, somewhere between apology and warning. "Nobody touches him." There was a beat of stunned silence. Somewhere near the back, a golden retriever whimpered and pressed itself against its owner's legs. A tabby cat yowled from inside its carrier. And then, from the far side of the room, a woman in teal scrubs set down the folder she was carrying and started walking forward. Her name was Mara Bennett, and she had been a veterinary technician for 11 years, the last 4 of them specializing exclusively in trauma cases and combat-exposed working dogs. She didn't rush. She didn't reach out a hand the way people instinctively do around frightened animals, a gesture Ghost would have read as a direct threat. Instead, she stopped a full 8 feet away, lowered herself slowly to one knee on the cold tile floor, and simply waited. "Ma'am, I really don't think," Caleb started, but Mara raised one hand, palm down, a quiet signal that asked for nothing but a moment of trust. Ghost's growl faltered. His ears, which had been flattened in pure aggression, twitched forward, then sideways, processing something the humans in the room couldn't see. His nose lifted, drawing in air in short, sharp pulls. Mara didn't move. She didn't speak. She kept her eyes low, her shoulders relaxed, her breathing steady and visible, the exact opposite of every panicked, tense body that had surrounded this dog for the last 3 weeks. Caleb's grip on the leash loosened out of sheer confusion. He had seen Ghost lunge at strangers, at doctors, even once at another handler who tried to walk him. He had never seen him simply stop. "Sergeant," Mara said quietly, still kneeling, still perfectly still, "how long since he lost his partner?" The question landed like a physical blow. Caleb's jaw tightened. 3 weeks. "How did you?" "He's not aggressive," Mara said, cutting him off gently, her eyes finally lifting to meet Caleb's. "He's terrified. There's a difference, and most people never learn to see it." She paused, watching Ghost's chest rise and fall, watching the tension bleeding slowly out of his massive shoulders. He's not guarding himself. He's guarding a space that isn't there anymore. Ghost took one step forward. Then another. The leash went slack in Caleb's stunned hand. And for the first time in 3 weeks, the dog who supposedly bit anyone who came near him lowered his head, closed the last few feet of distance between himself and the kneeling stranger, and pressed his skull gently against her shoulder. The waiting room, which seconds earlier had braced for violence, fell into absolute, disbelieving silence. Caleb Reyes, a man who had faced down enemy fire without flinching, felt his throat tighten in a way that had nothing to do with fear. That's... He started, and had to stop, had to swallow hard before he could finish. That's not possible. He hasn't let anyone near him. Not the base vet. Not his old trainer. Nobody. Mara reached up, slowly, and rested her palm against the side of Ghost's face. The dog leaned into it like it was the first gentle touch he'd felt in weeks. Maybe it was. He's not choosing me, she said softly, still not breaking contact, still speaking in that low, even voice. He's telling me something. And I don't think you're going to like what it is. Caleb's expression shifted from disbelief to something sharper, something almost afraid. What do you mean? Mara finally looked up at him, and there was no triumph in her face, only a grim kind of certainty that comes from having seen this exact scene play out before, more times than she wished she had. I mean, she said quietly, this dog isn't just grieving his handler, Sergeant. He's trying to warn you about something. And judging by the way he keeps looking at that door behind you, I don't think whatever it is has happened yet. The room went cold. Every eye in the clinic turned toward the entrance. And somewhere outside, a black sedan that had been idling across the street for the last 20 minutes finally began, slowly, to move. If this story already has your heart racing, hit that subscribe button right now, because Chapter 2 is where everything Ghost has been trying to say finally comes to light, and it changes everything about why he was really brought to this clinic. Mara didn't move from the floor. She kept one hand resting against Ghost's neck, feeling the low, steady thrum of a heartbeat that had finally begun to slow. But her eyes stayed fixed on Caleb, and on the black sedan crawling to a stop directly across from the clinic's front windows. Sergeant, she said quietly, who else knew you were bringing him here today? Caleb's face had gone pale under his tan. Nobody. It's a routine wellness check. It's not even in the system yet, I filed it this morning. He stopped himself, and something in his own words seemed to catch in his throat. That's not right. It should have taken 48 hours to process. Dr. Osei, who had been standing near the front desk this entire time, stepped closer, his own instincts sharpening. Sergeant Reyes, has anyone approached you about Ghost? About his last deployment, or about Corporal Dominguez? Caleb's hand tightened involuntarily on the now slack leash. There's been interest. Ghost was the only witness, so to speak, to what happened out there. Command wanted a full incident report, but some of it's still classified. I've had 2 different contractors reach out this week asking about his behavioral records. I told them to go through official channels. And did they? Mara asked. Caleb didn't answer. He didn't need to. Ghost's body had gone rigid again, but this time it wasn't aggression radiating off him, it was pure vigilance. His nose pointed directly at the glass doors, a low vibration building in his chest that wasn't quite a growl. Mara had spent enough years around combat-trained dogs to recognize the difference between an animal that wanted to attack and an animal that was trying to protect. Ghost wasn't guarding his own body anymore. He was positioning himself, subtly, between the door and the people in the room. He's not warning us about a stranger, Mara said slowly, standing now, one hand still resting on Ghost's shoulder for reassurance. He's warning us about someone specific. Someone he's smelled before. The bell above the clinic's entrance chimed, and a man in a gray jacket stepped inside, moving with the deliberate, unhurried gait of someone who wanted to appear casual and was failing at it. He scanned the waiting room once, his eyes landing on Caleb, then sliding, almost involuntarily, toward Ghost. That was the moment the dog exploded into motion. Ghost didn't lunge at the stranger. He surged backward, placing his own body directly in front of Mara and the nearest row of frightened clients, teeth bared, the sound tearing from his throat unlike anything he'd shown all morning, deeper, more controlled, the bark of a dog executing a trained protective maneuver rather than reacting out of fear. Caleb's training kicked in a half-second later. He was already moving, already stepping forward to put himself between the stranger and his dog. "This is a private clinic," Dr. Osei said sharply, moving toward the front desk phone. "Sir, I need you to state your business or leave immediately." The man in the gray jacket raised both hands slowly, a practiced, disarming gesture. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I represent a private contractor with an interest in Corporal Dominguez's final incident report. I was told the handler and dog would be here today for evaluation, and I was hoping for 5 minutes of the sergeant's time." "Told by who?" Caleb demanded, his voice low and dangerous now, all traces of the confident, dismissive Marine from 20 minutes earlier gone, replaced by something colder. "That information wasn't public. It wasn't even fully processed." The man's composure cracked, just slightly, just enough. "I was given a name. A clearance code. I assumed it was official." Mara watched Ghost's stance, watched the way his eyes tracked the stranger's every micro-movement, and she understood, with sudden and complete clarity, exactly what the dog had been trying to communicate from the moment he walked through those doors. Ghost hadn't been afraid of vet techs or clipboards or the sting of a needle. He had smelled this exact scent before, on the day his handler was killed. He'd been trying to warn everyone around him that whoever, or whatever, had orchestrated that ambush wasn't finished asking questions. "Sergeant," Mara said carefully, keeping her voice level even as adrenaline sharpened every word, "I don't think this man is here about paperwork. I think Ghost recognizes something about him. A scent, a sound, something from that day." Caleb's eyes never left the stranger's face. The ambush that killed Dominguez wasn't supposed to be possible. Our position was compromised from somewhere inside. Command's been quietly investigating for 3 weeks, and they told me the case was still wide open. His jaw set, hard as stone. "You're not a contractor. You're trying to find out how much this dog remembers." The man's hand twitched toward his jacket pocket, and in that single heartbeat, Ghost moved. Not toward Mara, not toward Caleb, but forward, fast and low, closing the distance in a blur of motion that sent the entire waiting room scrambling backward. Caleb shouted a command, sharp and instant, and Ghost obeyed instantly, freezing a single foot from the stranger, teeth still bared, every muscle coiled and ready, a living wall of restrained violence that needed only one more word to be unleashed. The stranger froze completely, hands raised higher now, all pretense gone. "Okay. Okay. Nobody needs to get hurt." Dr. Osei was already on the phone with base security, his voice calm and clipped as he relayed the situation. Within minutes, 2 military police vehicles pulled into the clinic parking lot, and the man in the gray jacket was escorted out, still insisting on his innocence, still unable to explain how he'd known the details of a classified deployment report. Later, once the clinic had quieted and the last curious client had finally gone home, Caleb sat on the floor beside Ghost, really beside him for the first time since Dominguez's death, no leash pulled taut, no distance kept between them. Ghost rested his heavy head against Caleb's knee, and for the first time in 3 weeks, the sergeant allowed himself to press his palm flat against the dog's back and simply breathe. He wasn't protecting himself this whole time, Caleb said quietly, looking up at Mara. He was protecting the truth about what happened to Dominguez. And he knew, somehow, that someone was still hunting for it. Mara knelt beside them both, resting a gentle hand on Ghost's flank. "Grief doesn't make animals unpredictable, Sergeant. It makes them honest." He wasn't broken. He was trying to tell all of us something, and he just needed someone willing to kneel down and listen. Base investigators later confirmed what Ghost's instincts had known from the very beginning, a security leak inside the unit's own logistics chain had been feeding sensitive deployment details to outside interests for months, information that had very likely contributed to the ambush that killed Corporal Dominguez. Ghost's refusal to let anyone near him hadn't been aggression at all. It had been the last living piece of evidence, guarding itself, waiting for someone patient enough, and brave enough, to finally get close. If this story moved you the way it moved everyone in that clinic, don't scroll away without hitting subscribe and turning on notifications, because stories like this one, stories about loyalty, instinct, and the bonds that outlast even the worst days, are exactly what this channel is built on. Drop a comment telling us what you'd have done in that waiting room, share this with someone who needs a reminder that heroes come on four legs too, and we'll see you in the next story.